Hello everyone, welcome to Data Structures and Algorithm. Today we will be discussing all about Python using 2D arrays, and for the last part we will be presenting a simple program showing a positional game. Next slide please. So Python provides many ways to create two-dimensional lists or arrays. However, one must know the differences between these ways because they can create complications in code that can be very difficult to trace out. So let's start by looking at common ways of creating 1D array first using a size n initialized with zeros. As you can see in the presentation, method 1a, this one is a simple basic example of 1D array. There is a variable named n, has a data of 5, and a variable arr or r array that has one element, which is 0, multiplied by n. So basically it's like multiplying 1 by 5. So if you print out, the output would show 5 zeros. Method 1b. In this method, instead of multiplying the element of the array, in the second method, the array is looped 5 times. So the output would be the same, but the method used is different. From method 1a, the method was multiplication, and method 1b is repetition. Next. So method 2a. Here we will be showing examples of 2D arrays. The first method is multiplication. So there are two variables named rows at calls having data of 5. Now, the array here is has two containers. So let me explain. We have a universal set R. Now let excuse me. Now let calls be the set A and rows be the set B. So calls is inside rows. So when you multiply calls by 5, it results to 5 zeros. Now, if you multiply the digits or the elements inside the calls and multiply it by rows, then instead of zeros, this set calls will be multiplied by 5, resulting in an output of 5 zeros and also 5 copies of those zeros. Next. In this second method, just like in 1D array, the repetition method or the loop method, here in 2D array, there would be two containers instead of one container or one set. So the universal set R has the set rows and a subset calls. And here, as you can see, the first loop would be inside. So calls or the subset of rows is being looped 5 times before the set calls is looped 5 times, showing the same result with 2a. Next slide, please. Now, in this particular method, instead instead of just looping it, here we create an empty set or an empty array, which is call. There are two variables, rows and calls, and then an empty array. Now, here, the zeros is being appended every time the calls is looped. And then every time the call is looped, the array or array R will be looped 5 times, and instead of showing zeros, it would show the duplicate of the zeros inside call. Next. Now, method 2C shows ways that give seemingly same output as of now. Now, let's change one of the elements in the array of 2A and 2B. Here, we expect only the first element of first row to change to 1, but the first element of every row gets changed to 1 in method 2A. This specular functioning is because Python uses shallow list, which we will try to understand. Now, in method 1A, Python doesn't create 5 integer objects, but creates only one integer object, and all the indices of the array R point to the same int object as shown in the next slide. Now, if as you can see, R array is represented in 5 boxes. These 5 boxes are the array container that has 5 elements, and all these 5 elements point to one int object that has value 0. Now, as I have said earlier, every element in the array has set to be zeros. Now, if we assign the 0th index to another integer, say 1, then a new integer object is created with a value of 1, and then the 0th index now points to this new int object as shown in the second image. So, based on this representation, if there is only one integer object, then every element of the array points to one direction. And if we change one of the element, this particular element will point to the new assigned object, and the rest would still point to the same default object, which is value 0. Next slide. Now, if we assign the 0th index to another integer, say 1, then a new integer object is created with a value of 1, and then the 0th index now points to this new int object as shown. Okay, it's just a repeat. Next. So similarly, when we create a 2D array as R equals bracket 0 bracket multiplied by calls multiplied by rows, now we are essentially extending the above analogy. Now, if only one integer is created in a single 1D list or array is created, and all its indices point to the same in object and point 1. Now, array index 0, array index 1, array index 2, and array index n minus 1 now all point to the same list object above in point 2. Now, the step or the setup can be visualized in the image. Here, there is array containing array index 0, array index 1, array index 2, array index 3, and array index 4, pointing below the one-dimensional array object, which contains 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And those four or five, uh, excuse me, five element points to int object value 0. Now, if we use this image by explaining the code, the first process would begin the in the 1D array object before going up. So it's like starting from the inside going to the outside. Next slide. Now let's change the first element in the first row of R as R index 0 and 1D index 0 is equals to 1. Now R index 0 points to the single list object we created. Remember R index 1, R index 2, and so on all point to the same list object 2. Now the assignment of the R00 will create a new int object with the value 1. And R00 will now point to this new int object now which will show us 1 instead of 0. This can clearly be seen in the image. As you can see, in the loop or in the code, there was R00. Now the first 0 index tells particularly to the row of the object. And the second one, the second 0 points to the column. Is it right? Is it column? Anyway, so the first one, or the first 0, tells the particular set. And the second one tells what element of the set. Is it the first set or the second set or a second element, etc. Next, please. So when 2D arrays are created like this, changing values at a certain row will affect all the rows since there is essentially only one integer object and only one list object being referenced by all the rows of the array. As you would expect, tracing out errors caused by such usage of shallow list is difficult. Hence, the better way to declare a 2D array is through looping. Use the image for syntax only. Next, please. This method creates 5 separate list objects unlike method 2a. Now, one way to check this is using the is operator, which checks if the two operands refer to the same object. Now, for method 2b, it checks if R0 and R1 refer to the same object. And it prints false since it does not refer to the same object. Now in method 2a, it checks if R0 and R1 refer to the same object. Now it prints true because there is only one list object being created. Next.
Okay. multi-dimensional list in Python. There can be more than one additional dimensional list in Python. Keep it that in mind that a list can hold other lists. That basic principle can be applied over and over. Multi-dimensional lists are listed within lists. Usually, a dictionary will be better choice rather than a multi-dimensional list. Meaning nito, there can be more than a one-dimensional list. There can be 2D o 3D and so on. So yung 1D, siya lang yung normal na list and 2D list is a list within a list and so on. Ganun lang. Next slide. And this is how you access a multi-dimensional list. As shown as example here, there's a list of numbers. This is a 2D list. So print lang siya. Next slide mo nga. Next. This is how you access a list with the help of loop. So, yung list lang kanina, tulad lang nun. Tapos, for loop. For a record in A, print record A. As you can see, print lang niya yung list within the list. Tapos, na nalipat lang siya ng row. Next. Next example is accessing using square brackets. It, yung example lang ulit kanina. Tapos, approach natin siya using square brackets. Pero, gagamit pa rin tayo ng for loop. For example here, for I in range len A and for J in range LA square bracket I print A I J and itong end na to for space lang siya para di magdikit-dikit yung numbers. Tapos I forget to mention na we use nested for loops here so we can access every element within the list. Yun lang. Next, creating a multi-dimensional list within a zero. Dito naman, we have two variables here, which is m and n. And we will use zero to create a multi-dimensional list. As you can see here, the sample O, ay, bracket, bracket O for every x in range n, which is 5 and close brackets for x in range m. So yung pag-explain nito, yung zero daw for every x in n which is 5. Tapos ano yun, 5 zeros. I-multiply mo pa siya sa x in range m which is 4, which is 4 nga. So naging ano siya, 4 elements of list tapos tig pa 5 siya na zeros as you can see here in the output. Kung sa math parang ano lang siya, exponent yung nasa labas ng bracket. Yun lang, next mo. Methods on multidimensional lists. Here first example of method is append. It adds an element to the end of the list. As you can see here in the output, example in the output, nag-add lang siya ng element which is 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Inad lang siya dun sa end ng list. Next mo. Second method is extend. It adds an elements on list or any reservoir to the end of a current list. So, itong namang extend, ginagamit siya para mag-add ng element dun sa list within a list. For example here, A, tapos index na 0. So, yun yung unang element ng list A, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Tapos, nag-extend siya ng 12, 14, 16, 18. As you can see here in the example, na-add siya dun sa first element ng list. Next. Third method is reverse. Ginagamit lang siya para ma-reverse lang yung order ng list. As you can see here in the example, we have a list here, which is A, and A bracket 2 that reverse. Kung makikita mo dun sa example, yung third element ng list na bago yung order niya na reverse. Dati ano siya, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Tapos dun sa output, naging 20, 16, 12, 8, 4. Next. Next.
Okay, good day. I'm Just Labrador and I will show you how the simple tic-tac-toe game works and kung paano ina-apply ang 2D array do sa game na ito. First, nakikita niyo po, ito po yung simple game. Ito po yung columns and rows ng tic-tac-toe. Tapos, hinihingi po niya yung input ng 1 to 9 nung first player. Yung 1 to 9 po nagre-represent sa position ng grid ng tic-tac-toe. From top right to left and pababa and so on. Kunyari po, ang first player ay ang X. Ang in-input niyo po ay 1. Nagkaroon na po ng value na X yung first row ng first column na X. Tapos sunod naman po ay yung player 2. Para po nang naglalaro ng tic-tac-toe, pero pinabanggit niyo po yung position imbis siya yung player ang naglalagay mismo. Yung player 2 ay 5, 0. Tapos ang player 1 naman po ay ang input niya ay 4 and ang player 2 ay 7. Player 1 naman po, siyempre lalaban siya ay 3 and player 2 ay 2. Player 1 ay 8. Player 2 ay draw. Player 2 ay 6. Player 1 ay 9. It's a draw. Kaya po, pag wala po siyang nabuo, kagaya ng normal na tic-tac-toe na line, grade na sunod na line, draw siya. Tapos, kung subukan naman po natin kung may manalo sa kanila. Ngayon, ang unang input ay 1, sunod ay ng 2, tapos 4, tapos 9, tapos 7. Pag 7 naman po, nabuo na po yung pattern na sa unang column. Sa unang column, isang column na X. Yung X, yung player 1 na po na X ang nanalo. Paano ba siya gumagana? Ito ang code. Ang basically po, yung grid na yon ay isang array, 2D array. Board equals a list of a list. Ito po yung unang row, second row, third row. Ito po siya, blank. kada element siya. Yung guhit ang nakasulat. Guhit lang ang laman niya. And kapag nag-input ang user ng number, ihanapin ng program kung saan ba siya. Pag 1 ang in-input ng user, tapos kung player 1 siya, yung X ay ilalagay niya sa row 1 and column 0 ay row 0 and column 0. Simula pa siya dito. Parang naghanap lang po siya ng X and Y coordinates sa gaya ng sinabi ni Ivan kanina. Yung unang value na kukunin kung alin doon sa mga list ang kukunin, tapos yung second value kung ano yung element ng list na pinili ang gagamitin, and so on. Yun po. Tapos para malaman po kung paano nanalo, check niya kung yung pattern na nabuo, kung yung row 0 ay column 0, column 2 ay row 2, column 1 ay row 1 and column 1. Basta po pag na meet na po yung condition na may diagonal, horizontal, or vertical na magkakatabi na para parehas na X or 0, doon na po malalaman na panalo. Pag di po nangyari yun, mag-equals po siya sa draw. Tapos kung may nagkapatong-patong po siya na kunyari parehas yung nilagay niya, mag-invalid input po. Let's try again. Try natin kung mag-invalid input niya. Pag nilagay po ng player 1 ay 1, tapos nilagay din ng player 2 ay 2, invalid, already taken po siya, kaya hingi ulit siya ng position. Tapos kung hindi naman po number ang nilagay niya, ganun na po, valid is number. So, kung gusto naman po mag-quit ng kalagitnaan game, ilagay ko lang. So, yun na po ang simple game na tic-tac-toe na ginagamitan ng to the array. Thank you ma'am for listening.